Oops, I've pushed the button too early. Okay, well that's my fault. Um, Dump it in. You haven't done this for a while. Oops, sorry guys. Did it go again? Oh, maybe I'll put it in off topic this time. Uh, oh, maybe in video, but it's kind of off topic, I guess. Yeah, folks, I'm streaming vid on. I call it my C64 Sea Wolf disassembly attempt. Case anyone's interested. Yeah, not very well organized today. Um, so yeah, how to go about this? Um, well, maybe I'm going to share my notes along the way, and I'm probably not going to do this game justice with my attempt here, but I just thought I'd say something instead of me forgetting it, and it can't help anybody then. So maybe just I made myself a quick outline. Why I wanted to disassemble this game was, yeah, I was hoping to port it to the Mega 65 and write it in Basic 65, and I wanted to try and make it a four-player paddle game in the process. And what I wanted to get out of this assembly, maybe the original font, not necessary, but maybe I'm happy with Petsky. Original sound effects, I did want those, like the ship explosions, the sound of the sea, the sound of the small PT boat going dit 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 dit. Things like that would make it sound more authentic. How the progress is so far, I keep thinking it's about 90%, but I've kind of thought that for about a week and it still feels like 90%. So it's a bit of a bottomless pit. You can sort of study these things as deep as you want to. What's my level of experience with assembly language? It's modest. Back in my sort of teen years, I pushed a little. I could write small routines, but that was about it. In recent times, Mega 65 project exposed me to more assembly language, sort of debugging things inside the Hippo source and such. So exposure is growing. My experience with disassembly, modest. Maybe small routines I might have been curious about, but nothing beyond that. So this is my first time to try and comprehend an entire game. So why choose Sea Wolf? Oh, I haven't even checked my audio settings. I should try that. Where's OBS? Hello. Yeah, I think audio is okay. Good. um, so yeah, why choose Sea Wolf? Well, it's relatively small game. I'd say some might call it a simple game, and it's just 8 kilobytes of ROM on a cartridge. And yeah, I've loved it from childhood. It was a game that came with my Commodore 64. So does an 8 kilobyte game from 1982 deserve to be called simple? After what I've seen so far, personally, I'd say no. And yeah, just trying to comprehend what that entire 8 kilobytes is trying to do. Yeah, it's quite a big undertaking. 3 weeks in, and yeah, I don't feel like I've understood it all, but yeah, I'll still share some of that journey with you as best as I can and see if it helps. Maybe some of you might want to disassemble your own favorite games from the past in a similar fashion. So yeah, I just left some notes here and kind of where I started the journey, sort of looking at the game. I think the first thing that drew my eyes is the text. Maybe I wanted to find out where this kind of text was drawn. Not that I had to, but I guess, curiosity as it is. And yeah, that proved quite difficult too, because it wasn't your standard Petsky locations for these kinds of letters. I don't know how I came about it, but I probably put like a watch point at certain points on the screen and try to figure out when did this sort of text get written here. So that's why I put these numbers here. I was trying to print to the screen and get a sense of where text was drawn at different locations. Like I've got the Y's here from 0 to 22, that's 23, 24, but this timer text drew over it. And same on the X, this is 0, 10 point, 20, 30, 39. So yeah, I probably would have watch point at some point in the game. I mean, I guess we could do it again if I could figure out where things are. But I mean, what it would have entailed inside the M65 debug, I would have said watch a certain memory location. The memory of the screen is at 0400. I'm probably sure we'll probably put some sort of offset on top of that and sort of see where it hits, the breakpoint would hit, and then I could sort of reverse the debugging and see who tried to hit that point and write something to it. Yeah, and after doing stuff like that, I found there was some part in the ROM here at EFBD that was doing it. But yeah, the text was not in normal ASCII, PETSCII sort of locations. Um, yeah, so you can see I've sort of deciphered the what it was. The space character was hex 26, and they had the A, B, C, D after that, 27, 28, 29. And I just kept this table with me as I looked at the hex, and yeah, okay, 3F is Y, 35 is O, and so on. 3B is U. And I could slowly nut out the entire text that way. Oh yeah, and I did notice the null terminators they added here. So for each line, if we go back up again, your mission is to destroy as many, and null terminator here. And yeah, you get that your mission is to destroy as many null terminator enemy ships as possible before time runs out, or runs terminator, and so on. So that was their style of doing text. As for why they chose to put the letters here and not in the PETSCII sort of, or is it screen code positions, or yeah, probably screen code. I later on, this is further in the weeks, I noticed this is in the VIC-2's Bank 0, the first 16 kilobytes of memory, and below this, that they put it in, how can I put it, like in Notepad, they put it in the page 1, so in these sort of locations. So, but that's also where the stack is. So I can't remember it. Oh, actually, we can find out now. So, oh, sorry, not there. Inside M65 debug, I added some extra things so I can look at char at index 27, char at index 28. And so if I look at char at index 26, I put a hint in there that that's at location 130. So all those letters are 130 and onwards. But then what they did with the stack pointer, usually the stack pointer is pretty high, at I guess 1FFF, but they couldn't do that for this game. So they brought the stack pointer really low. I don't know if it was like 120 or something like that. Well, probably 12F, I imagine. Or yeah. So and then they put the characters after that. So yeah, that's maybe tight on space. It's an Ultimax game, so I guess it's maybe memory's pretty tight. Yeah, after the alphabet and the digits, then they had their own custom characters of sorts. From 50 to 53, those were the torpedo indicators. So if you go back to the screen up here, where is it? These ones down here, those yeah. So to say how many torpedoes or missiles you've got left. So they were across 1, 2, 3, 4 characters. Here I found this, maybe the initials of the developer. This position had also another little Easter egg. It actually said HAL, like the HAL initials of HAL Laboratory, I guess. But yeah, that gets overwritten later on. And what these were was interesting. You can kind of tell these are the submarine elements at the bottom. So that's already a clue that the submarines were drawn by characters. They're not sprites. Actually, that's another interesting thing. What are sprites in this game and what are characters? So all the boys here, you see 1, 2, 3, 4. There can only ever be 4 boys at a time. And at the top part here, there can only ever be 4 ships at a time. So the boys are standard sprites, and the ships are standard sprites too, but they've been stretched horizontally. So if you were to draw them normally, they'd be half the width, the same size as the boy, but yeah, they've stretched them horizontally to be a bit longer. So yeah, that's how the game looks so crowded, I guess, with 8 sprite elements on screen. There's 2 submarines drawn with these sort of custom characters. And also each of these submarines can fire 4 missiles. So there could be potentially like 8 missiles in the screen at the same time. So there's 8 missiles plus 2 submarines, that's 10, plus 8 sprites. That's sort of like 18 elements on the screen at the one time. So it's a pretty busy, crowded game potentially. And so you can probably guess that the missiles, when they're shot, they're also drawn with custom characters as well. So yeah, that's part of it. But yeah, as for the character table, This position 50 we've covered, that's those torpedo indicators. And now 55 to 59, we're, we're, as you can see, it's kind of doubled up. And what's happening there is like 55 to 59 is the player 1 submarine, and 50A to, I should say 5A to 5E is the player 2 submarine. And even though they look identical here, I've made another sort of capture at a different point in the game where you see the player 1 submarine is sort of further to the left in the character sort of box, while the player 2 submarine is further to the right in the character box. So you get a sense that they're redrawing um, these custom characters based on the sort of pixel position they want them to show at. So it's all like a custom sort of almost like a custom soft sprite that they're accomplishing with characters, which is pretty neat, which is pretty cool. And further on in 6.0, I think I deciphered this better later because these notes are from very early on. In you can see sort of the sense of some missile information here. I've deciphered this better in the disassembly, so maybe I'll go to the disassembly. And where was that location? It's probably further in the back somewhere. Maybe I'll close the two windows and go back and see if I can spot the notes I had on the missile stuff. I probably mentioned something about missile. I was probably further lower in memory here. Sorry, not organized. Oh, here we go. So yeah, what we're seeing at that point in the character set, this 60 to 7F, I think that first group is the player 1 missiles. So each player has 4 missiles, as you saw up there. 1, 2, 3, 4 for player 2. 1, 2, 3, 4 on this side for player 1. And they're also drawn with these custom characters. And so you could probably get a sense here that they're sort of shifting within the characters where this missile will be drawn, so it looks sort of like pixel perfect as they animate it. So this one's a bit further up and this one's a bit lower and so on. This one might be further to the right, this one's further to in the middle, and yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, in the disassembly I gave a sort of more refined example of that. So 300 to 37F, I think that's the same. Oh, I haven't put that in hex. Which is, yeah, character 60 to 6F. Can I put those side by side maybe? Yeah, all right, I'll try to do that. 60 to 6F, maybe if I draw that up. So 60, 60, 61, 62, 63 is drawing missile 4 for player 1 at whatever sort of refined pixel position they want it drawn at with these 4 characters. So yeah, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 for player 1's missile 4. Then player 1's missile 3 is here, 64, 65, 66, 67, missile 2, 68, 69, 6A, 6B, missile 1, 6C, 6D, 6C, 6F. So that's all of that group. And then for player 2, underneath is, yeah, this 70 to 7F region of the characters. So yeah, and you can see those missiles are at different locations. So I guess these get updated every frame to move the torpedo along or missile along. Yeah, 70, 71, 72, 73 for missile 4 for player 2, 74, 75, 76, 77 for missile 3, and so on, up all the way up to 7F. Yeah, so yeah, that was kind of figured out later in my journey, not at the beginning, that's for sure. Beyond that, there wasn't much else interesting. I thought some of these characters looked interesting. I thought maybe I could join them up and make a picture with them. There was some long lost artwork, but nah, I think it's just garbage beyond that. Um, and after that, I guess I had my first foot in the water figuring out how this tech stuff worked, what the characters were. I think it was sort of like looking at chunks of disassembly. And when you try to disassemble text, sorry, disassemble a game, you're not going to get lovely comments like this. All you're going to see is, if you do disassemble E7, EC. So maybe I thought there was a routine that was related to drawing text on the screen at this point because of my investigation earlier. I would have sort of maybe drawn 20 lines of disassembly from there. And sometimes it's hard to know where a routine starts and where a routine ends. So, I might have kept going. Oh, that's 20 lines, maybe go 30 lines and maybe look for an RTS at some point. Oh, okay, here's an maybe that's the end of the routine. So maybe I'll copy paste that text and slowly try to decipher what it's trying to do and copy it into Notepad or something or your favorite editor. And over time, it's painful. Like you can see, I would have encountered JSR E60 because here you are thinking, oh, I'm just going to study this routine, and oh crap, this routine's calling some other routine, and I'm going to have to disassemble that part and figure out what that part does. And hopefully, as you go down and down further, you get into smaller chunks of what's being trying to be accomplished. So yeah, I won't say it was easy. It wasn't. It just more exposure. So I would have dug into that E6, E0 position next. And as I'm doing this, I'm trying to write notes. So um, as I figure out what things are for, um, I give some more friendly loop sort of names to remind me, okay, this is looping back here. There's some sort of loop going on here. Maybe to draw the next of something or, yeah. Even now it's hard for me to remember all the details of this. Um, yeah, it's hard to know exactly. This, there were two pointers to the screen memory. I guess this one was drawing the character in the A register onto the screen. So this was a loop that was relating to drawing that text, I believe. Yeah, mentally it's hard to come back to these things. And whatever I've got here, I've sort of put more detail since then in the text file, which is on GitHub now. I guess there's this screen rope pointer stuff. These were like how do I put it? The screen locations. If I get ZMU up, maybe. So the first line of text here was the screen location for that. They put the high byte in this one and the low byte in that one. That's the 0400 row, and then underneath that is the 0428 row, which they use that index and that index. Next row 3 is this one, 0450, and so on. So I guess that was a table to quickly let them get to the start of each screen row and start dumping these texts that they wanted to write. Um, I guess maybe if I don't know if I have an example of the text drawing. This idea of inline text was interesting for me. I don't know if I've got an example for it. I have an example of inline text. I'm sure it's somewhere. Maybe did I say inline text? Address inline text. Pointer to inline text. There's all this mention of inline text. Because getting that stuff on this, maybe it was on a different day. Okay, draw inline text. Yeah, that's an example of what slowly, as the days passed, this idea of a draw inline text routine. So this time left message, the one that comes up here at the bottom, how it's drawn, there was a routine, draw inline text. So this call is at E5B0, and then immediately after, they don't put the next assembly routine. They just dump the text that they want. Uh, so this line JSR draw inline text was these bytes 2039E8. So that's going from E5B0 to B1 to B2. So the next assembly line should have been B3, but this has gone to BD instead. And B3 is here, and so they've got the characters of the text here instead. So yeah, if once you decipher the innards of this draw inline text routine, you'll see they're kind of popping the return address off the stack, and then they're saying, okay, that's where the text we want to draw is actually, and so we'll iterate over that, keep iterating until, sorry, my headset turns off sometimes. So yeah, keep iterating over this address we get from the stack pointer, which we've popped off. and draw this T over here, draw the I over here, and keep iterating that stack pointer return value until we get to the null pointer. And when we get there, we're going to push that back into the stack pointer and return so that it returns nicely back to the next assembly line that goes after this embedded inline text. So yeah, that was a common pattern you'll see within this assembly. There's a fair bit of that. A lot of the text is drawn that way. Is there anything else that's of interest? I feel there is, but it's hard to gauge what to share. Printing of the scores. Uh, it could be too much detail. The SIDs were interesting. I did find a location where they just had a table in memory in the ROM with these just raw values of the SID chip that they were going to pump into, um, and just to initialize them, at the start of the game or a cold start or something like that. So this D400 was the start of the SID addresses for the registers. And yeah, they just loop over, and just pump these values. So D400 would be this value, D40 would be set, 01 would be set to this value, D402 to set to this value, and so on. And yeah, I tried to decipher what the intent behind that all was, to break it down. D40 set to this, that's the low frequency of voice 1. Then they put the high byte of the voice 1 frequency. Then they set the pulse width, and yeah, so on and so on. And I can see sort of clues of what they were trying to achieve with these voices. And that kind of helped along the way. So they're using voice 1 for this reason, voice 2 for that. I haven't sort of documented that terribly well, but I think in the disassembly, I documented it better. I think this voice 1 mentioned it. So I got a sense voice 1 was the ocean sound in the background playing. Voice 2, I guessed, was the fire sound from what I saw them set things to. And voice 3 was the explosion sound when you hit something like a buoy or a ship. And yeah, just deciphering that helped with the debugging too, because later on when I saw these voices trigger in the code, I could then kind of guess, okay, so this part of the code must relate to, they fired a missile or something. Or when it's voice 3 being activated, I could get a sense of, so they've done some detection, a missile has hit a ship or a missile has hit a buoy, and so now it's the time to play the explosion. And so yeah, that was a handy way to sort of get a few more clues of where I am within this code base. Um, Game loop iteration. Maybe yeah, some of these points of the game were really how do you say? I guess it's high level because you're trying to. Here's a routine that you want to decipher, but it's going to mean sort of cracking open each of these routines and figuring out what they're doing. And so yeah, it's quite painstaking. But yeah, you get a sense it's a very high level activity here, and it's going into sort of the low level details within. Yeah, this game mechanics was maybe one of the biggest routines, and it did a lot. Um, and over time, yeah, these magic numbers start to disappear, and you start to get an idea of what things really are, and you're looking less at numbers and more at sort of meaningful text. It's still quite intense, and you can see there's some points where I still haven't figured out what the intent of some variable use is. I've just given them some sort of very generic names, and with the intention that I'll come back to this later and I'll decipher it and I'll give it a nicer name later. So if you go to the disassembly, the latest disassembly, when I go to E000, and you can probably see I've probably by now found a nicer name than that for this thing used at E00D. Okay, I've figured out its ship's Y position. Okay, and they're using X as an index to find the Y position of one of the current ships. So yeah, I guess that's what I can share on that front. Um, Maybe beyond this, what is there to share? The sprites. Oh yeah, you can see I've got now in M65 debugger a way to sort of dump out the sprites at various indexes. Um, so on. You can look at what is it, F0, F1, blah blah blah, the explosions and backwards and yeah, the mirrored ships. And you can see these look very narrow compared to how they look in the game because they're stretched horizontally twice in the game. Um, any other points of interest? Um, explosions. The next one. Nah. Handle missile firing. Probably this is where I'm the most still debugging right now. I think the missile firing and the use of custom characters to make those missiles, look pixel perfect as they scroll up the screen. Haven't quite figured that out, so that's currently my journey now. Um, and where was there anything else? Kind of not sure what else I can share here. Uh, there was that HAL laboratory thing. I don't know if I made a mention of that here. The Char, but maybe we can find it. Yeah, the Char. That was around 55. Those were the, okay, 59, 50. Oh, sorry, Char 5A. These were those submarine chars. And after the submarine chars were these, that was then the missiles going up. So that went up to 7F, I think, and then 80. No, I've missed it. All right, maybe it was 50. Oh, I think what it is I can't find it here because the HAL Laboratories thing was overwritten by the submarine, the Player One submarine. So to look at where it really was, I think we go to disassembly and we go right to the end of the ROM somewhere where the character set was put, somewhere at the back. Okay, here we go. Yeah. So yeah, the character set is in the ROM pretty late at ED94, or probably a bit earlier than that. But yeah, you saw the initials. I think someone on Facebook mentioned they had a guess at Suzuki or something. Somebody Suzuki. I've forgotten it now. But and also yeah, you see, there's one extra chart that was unused behind this that has the initials to HAL, which was kind of cute. But I don't think it's actually used anywhere in the code. I didn't see any sign of this address being made use of. I think another mystery while I was debugging this was this character set. I think was real. How do I put this? Was it the character set that was? I didn't get a sense of how it was copied down into the Vic Bank Zero. Oh no, this one is being intentionally copied. Okay, they do have a copy routine. So it must have been the sprites. So this is like the cold start routine, I think it was it? Yeah, cold start handler. So when you power up your machine, it runs the cold start handler, and oops. And during that cold start, yes, some of this char data is copied from the ROM down into Bank 0 of the VIC, so that it can be seen by the VIC chip. But then I was wondering, like, where are the sprites? Like, why can't I see the sprites getting copied down there? And I think later on, I was reading up that Ultimax cartridges had some special mode where they sort of mirror elements down into Bank 0. Something related because they're such a memory constrained system, so they had to have shortcuts like that. So I think, yeah, here we go. So the start of, I left some notes on my comprehension of that. All these sort of fancy memory mapping modes of the 64 based on whether various pins are high or low, game, XROM, low RAM, high RAM. From what I saw, low RAM, high RAM was set via address 1 on the 64 side, and this game and XROM lines were set on your cartridge. Your cartridge was dictating these, and the combination of these were deciding, how memory is configured, and also I guess whether this Ultimax mode is turned on, and that sort of magical mirroring of that sprite data down occurs or not. Um, Yeah, this was the web page I read more about that. If you're interested to hear more about that, I kind of quoted the text from there relating to it, where it said, yeah, it's this region on the ROM, the Ultimax cartridge will mirror it down to the VIC Zero bank over here, and that's yeah the technique they used to make the sprites visible. There was no copying it down to memory because the Ultimax chip didn't have enough memory. Um, so yeah, that was interesting. Oh, and also because I initially disassembled this from a or like a cracked version, I saw that the cracker had, I guess they have a decrunching routine, and the cracker was intentionally copying the sprites over to this location manually in their routine to make this the port of the Ultimax game run without the need of a cartridge. So yeah, that was interesting too. Um, Beyond here, I don't know what else to share, but I can share where the journey is going to go next. Like I see all these global variables here. A lot of them are in the zero page, and I've discovered their purpose for many of them. Some have very clear purposes. Some have kind of generic purposes. They're used in different ways in different locations, and sometimes I've annotated it's used this way in this location, in this routine, and so on. Um, and there are some variables I haven't figured out so well yet, so I still need to sort of visit where they're used and try and decipher how they work and what their real purpose is. And so there's still, I don't know, maybe a dozen or more of those sort of variables floating around that I still have to figure out. Some I've still got just like a guess. I think it's just for that, but I really should go and check. Um, Part of me wonders whether I should share one of those journeys with you now, but I feel like I don't know how deep that sort of rabbit hole goes. Hours can disappear before I figure out what a variable's meant to do. Um, but maybe I can just share the start of one of those journeys. I think these dunno one, that's my way of quickly saying don't know, don't know one, don't know two. Um, those seem to relate to random number generation. There was a random number generator routine in here, and there was a lot of shifting going on, and I've never deciphered a random number generator or studied how a random number generator works, so I don't know how common such an activity is in random number generators, or is this something a bit ad hoc that they created just for the game. But yeah, that's the sort of thing I'll have to sort of study this carefully, look at what all this shifting is it trying to accomplish, and maybe give them nicer names based on what I comprehend they're doing. I guess random number generation is interesting to me because I am curious, let's say, how the ships are randomly placed on the screen. I'd like to match that to some extent. And, I did see a sense of this random number generation used to decide which ship is next, which was kind of interesting. So we've jumped here due to current ship not being visible. And somewhere down here, there's this decision of what kind of ship it should be, if I can find it. Okay, yeah, here it is. So we get a random number here at this point from 0 to 255. Then we compare it to 50. And if it's lower than, oh sorry, hex 50, so that's decimal 80. If it's lower than decimal 80, then we're going to skip to LDA2, which will set LDA to the value of 2. And I think that means a ship type. So we're picking a ship type depending on which range the random number is. And then we have another comparison here. We compare that random number to decimal 160. And if it's underneath that, then it's going to be another kind of ship. Okay, so here I've said else it's a freighter. So 0, if LDA is 0, it's going to be a freighter. So I guess if LDA is 1, then it's going to be a cruiser. And 2, it's going to be the fast PT boat. And that kind of puzzled me because like 0 to 80 compared to 80 to 160, that feels kind of even. And 160 to 255 is still fairly even. They, so as random numbers go, they feel evenly distributed. So I couldn't, from my memories of the game, I felt the PT boat, the speedboat one, was a bit of a rare occurrence, and I couldn't comprehend why this random number generation was distributed so evenly between them. It might relate to this later on. Maybe it is genuinely even at this point, but once it's decided there's some other logic that goes on, like this, compare this new, well, potentially newly spawned ship against existing ships, and like below this point, there's this effort to see would they clash. Like if I put a PT boat on now, like maybe I can get a picture to sort of help visualize this. Is there a picture anywhere? So yeah, if let's say from the right, if I put a fast PT boat now, is there any chance it will catch up and be drawn over the nearest ship on in this direction? So there's some assessment there, and if that's the case, then we're not drawing this PT boat. So it may have been that logic that slowed down the probability of the PT boat happening. That these ships needed to be further along to make room for a PT boat, and those past PT boat attempts were sort of failing. And in the meantime, some other cruiser came in or a freighter came in. So yeah, that might be the explanation of the the lack of PT boats in the game. Um, yeah, but maybe I'll leave it at that. But yeah, you can see that kind of the journey ahead. It's not over yet. And yeah, all right. Well, thanks for joining in, and hopefully it can help with any games you have a passion for that you want to disassemble and figure out how they work. All right, I'll leave it there, and I'll end the stream. If I can find out where to end the stream. Or this one. Okay.